Well, enough of scripted, pre-recorded Kelly. Now it's time for me to come to you live, which is a 1,000 times scarier. Let me just tell you that. That was the intro before me. How nice, I got to open up for myself. Me a little more relaxed. Now here you have me a little more nervous. I am so excited to be here with you today. My name is Kelly Swanson. It's so nice to meet you, and I sure wish I was there at Casbo speaking to you in person as it was the original plan. But we pivoted and we did it. And I'm here. And if I have to come to you virtual, then it's the next best thing. And just so you know, I can't see one of you. So I'm going to have to assume, well, I'm hoping you can see me because I went to a lot of effort to do my hair. But I'm going to feel your energy and know that you're here on this Zoom call, Zoom meeting with me. A little bit about me before we get started. In case you can't tell from my accent, I'm from Jersey, the southern side. No, obviously I'm from the South. You've probably already figured that out. I've spent most of my life being, well, a lot of things, but one is a motivational speaker and a comedian, which means I tell you you can do anything. Then I tell you I'm just kidding. Now, I know what some of y'all are probably thinking. You're probably thinking, motivational speaker, I thought she'd be skinnier. Yeah, so did I. According to my New Year's resolution, at this point, I was supposed to have lost 30 pounds and have buff arms. Instead, I'm pretty sure my muffin top just had twins. Oh, I've always struggled with my weight. Of course, my husband says when I say struggle, that implies I'm working at it. It's a shame he went missing. I'm struggling to find him. You might be thinking, she looks like a cross between Reba McEntire and Melissa McCarthy. I hear that all the time. I had somebody the other day tell me that I look like Adele before she lost the weight. Good thing I got a strong personality. I am also a storyteller, and I know that may sound weird, maybe not to y'all, my friends on the West Coast, as it does to my friends over on the East Coast, but I have been a storyteller my whole life, professionally and unprofessionally. I remember for years I got paid in things like chicken, sweet tea and chicken, and I didn't get the fancy hotel rooms. I'd stayed at the Motel 6s after they washed the evidence off the walls. I wouldn't stay in a room that still had that yellow body tape outline on the floor. I paid the maid $5 to take a picture of me laying in it. I sent it home to my mama with a note saying, won't be home for Christmas. It's hard being a storyteller, that's for sure. Nobody ever, like I said in the prior video, knew what to do with me because I've always been the pink zebra. Everywhere I've gotten in my life has been the result of just telling a story. And that's why I'm here today too. Eventually, I took on the mantle of strategic storytelling expert. Sounds fancy, doesn't it? I know. I'm still not exactly sure what it means. No, I'm just kidding. You're probably thinking, wow, this is the one thing we really needed this morning is a strategic storytelling expert. And you're probably thinking, what in the world does story even have to do with us? You're probably like, did you read who you were talking to today? What does storytelling have to do with us? And I would venture to say, everything. Because story is about influence and persuasion. And all of us, I believe, are in the business of persuasion, whether we realize it or tap into it or not. And when I found out what your theme was, mentor, vision, and purpose, I think you already know that's your theme. If not, surprise! Mentor, vision, and purpose. I really spend a lot of time as a storyteller thinking about what those three words mean and how they relate to my topic of creating a story-driven team and a culture. So when I heard those three words, mentor, vision, purpose, I knew exactly what story I needed to share. In this strange time, y'all, that we're living through, there are always the stories that leap to the front of the news. You know the ones that splash in brilliant color, catapulted by the likes and shares of an instant click world, where we are somehow as disconnected as we are connected. They're the stories that the ones with the biggest microphone have chosen for you to hear. But then there are the countless other stories that are whispered in the least traveled places that for some reason, they don't ever make it to the big microphones. This is one of those stories that you probably didn't hear about unless you were there. And even if you were there, this wasn't really one of those light up the marquee in Times Square kind of moments. It was more like where a million little ordinary flickers of light blend together into a moment you never forget, which is kind of the point. For it's these moments that truly take your breath away, as they're obviously divinely orchestrated. For I think fate weaves the finest tapestries out of the most threadbare strands of yarn. It all started, as with most stories in 2020, with a pandemic and a small town struggling to defeat this unmatched opponent that most certainly didn't play fair. I know, we're already familiar with this sport, right? We all witnessed the abrupt shift in society. One minute claiming how we're too busy, another selfie with friends, and time for a vacation at the beach, living in this digitally connected world where every single moment is shared on the internet in ways we never would have thought to share face to face. I mean, really, who walks into a wedding reception and pulls out pictures of the cereal you fixed this morning? Or, hey, anybody want to see this picture of my abs I took after my workout? Hashtag yoga. It's funny how our realities can become distorted when we take them online. And then one day in 2020, online suddenly became our new reality. So we went from being so connected online that we'd actually become disconnected to actually being locked down with nothing but our selfies. Real social distance. Some of us becoming so bored now, we kind of do want to see what she had for breakfast. We learned what it's like to distrust every person who comes within 3 feet of you. The overwhelming addiction to spray everything that comes into our house. And can the dog get COVID? Because he just played down the street. We learned what it's like to never have to show the bottom part of our face and how now you can talk to yourself in a store and nobody will even know. I'm loving that one. Oh, but heaven forbid you cough and you're public enemy number 1. Some of our jobs went into overdrive. And we're cursing the fact that we ended up in the essential worker pile while the rest of us felt time literally come to a crawl. As we saw our children and spouses in a whole new level of closeness that we used to think was always outside our busy grasp and now realize might have been a tad bit overrated. I'm just saying. Now, people around here where I am, being the innovative sort that we are, we found ways to adapt, as I'm sure you did too. But it's funny because suddenly the old people who were just complaining about how that newfangled computer was rotting our brains are now suddenly becoming Zoom experts, right? Landing in that deliciously entertaining gap between understanding the most cutting-edge technology, yet not understanding where the camera is so we can only ever see Pawpaw's ear. And for heaven's sake, somebody buy him one of those ear hair trimmers for Christmas. The choppy cyber family gatherings where a slurred, frozen face sends a family to call 911, thinking Great Aunt Bert just had a stroke, when it really was just a wonky internet connection. Or the time my great Uncle Buford stood up in the middle of his Zoom birthday party and didn't warn us that he wasn't wearing pants. It's just some things you can't unsee. The live streams inadvertently left running where we got to hear what our coworkers really thought of us, and school children bouncing in and out of remote learning like ping pong balls, where we suddenly developed a profound new appreciation for teachers. Now, the people here where I live, we're no strangers to hardships in our small town. We tackled the pandemic with the gift that had been passed down to us. We've been poor before, we'll be poor again. And there was never a shortage of advice on everything from how to make your own hand sanitizer to the proper mask fitting to the best way to conduct your virtual church Bible study. And like most advice, it tended to be contradicted by lunch, leaving you not much better than it found you. But like I said, you can take away all our small town's favorite things and we'll somehow find our way back to a covered dish casserole. Maybe some of you are going, amen. Anyway, for a while in 2020, our town was holding its own in the fight against COVID for the most part. But as with any fight, there's the one thing that really starts to defeat you. Time. The weariness of getting up to yet another day of this. The tiny little defeats that don't feel like much until they're just too much. And one day, you can't figure out why you simply don't want to get out of bed. No, it wasn't the big things that made it feel like the pandemic was going to break us. It was the small things. These rites of passage painted over, from weddings to graduations, even to funerals. For at least in our town, what have you left, if not these traditions that carry you through the highway mile markers of your life, like snapshots stored up in a silver frame collection covering a grand piano in an old woman's home, displayed to all passers-by as a testament to a life well lived. It was hardest to watch for the younger ones, as most of the gray-haired bunch had already smelled the perfume of disappointment or dreams unfulfilled. But the young ones, well, aren't they what make us smile as we get to relive our moments through them? Their first date, waving at them as they drive off to college or come back. We cheer them on as they get dunked in holy water, excited at another reason to have a covered dish. The traditions that are just as much for us as they are for the younger ones having them. That was one of the hardest parts of that year in our town, the drive-through graduation. The quinceañera they'd been planning since she was 5, maybe next year. The gangly kid that finally made the basketball team but never got to play. The let's show grandma baby's first steps that aren't the same through an iPhone lens. The last Thanksgiving he'll get to be with us before he enlists, but all the chairs sit empty this year. I think that's why it was so discouraging to hear that the prom was being canceled. I mean, of course, everybody understood, had to be responsible, and on its own, it doesn't really add up to an earth-shattering loss. But let's keep things in perspective. But it was just one more thing. In a town that was really, collectively, feeling defeated. And everybody moved on, some a little relieved at another project swept off their desk. Everybody except one person, the lunch lady. We all called Wheeze. That was a nickname. Not even sure what her real name was. Most of us just knew her as the tiny older lady last in line wearing the hairnet and the sensible shoes. And so at their next Zoom staff meeting, for once, she raised her hand and shared her idea. We should figure out how to have a prom anyway, she said. Now, of course, it was immediately shot down, as most ideas are, especially for something that had already been decided by a committee. But why not, she asked. What if there's another way? I think that's a real important question we should always ask ourselves these days. What if there's another way? Well, Wheeze just wouldn't let it go. And finally, somebody blurted out, "Why do you care so much about a silly prom? We've got enough to worry about, bigger problems than this." And she told them why. How when she was a teenager, she was sick all the time. That was how she got the nickname Wheeze. So sick, well, she missed most of high school, including the big deal moments, like prom, seeing all the pictures, hearing everybody talk about it, watching through her window at the kids across the street, standing on the front porch for a picture, then climbing into that limo. She knew what it felt like to never get your prom and how long that feeling would last. Some of us didn't get the childhood most kids wish for, she said. Some of you know exactly what that feels like. Many of our kids here do too. I just want one night for them. One night where it doesn't have to be about COVID. Just one night to shine. And pretty much every person on that call stopped. They were thinking back to their own missed moments in childhoods they didn't wish for, and the chance to do something good for these kids when the whole town really needed it most. Well, what should the prom theme be? Somebody asked. We smiled. Easy. A time to shine. They had no idea what they had just started. For it's often with the smallest of mustard seeds that faith begins to flourish into something larger than imagined. For isn't that what faith is? Believing in something you can't quite see yet. And so a vision was born in that meeting. It was sold to the others not as a, we should do this, but rather as a, here's why it matters so much to me, personally. Which is how all the best visions get sold. In fact, let's talk about visions for a minute. I happen to go to a really big church. Don't worry, I won't get churchy. It's just an illustration. I go to a really big church with a lot of things going on. And I asked my pastor once, how do you decide which projects to take on? So many needs, so many ideas. How do you choose? And he said they learned a lesson a long time ago, that the ideas they came up with in committee meetings around steaming cups of coffee rarely had staying power. He said, they'd start strong, but eventually they just fizzle out. But the ideas that came from somebody in the congregation, brought up in a hallway conversation in passing, that just bubbled up, from someone who noticed that single mothers in the church needed someone to help them with their car maintenance, and we've got people who are willing and able to help. Well, those ideas, he said, they turned out to be the keepers. Now, I know that we're not all on leadership on this call, but in a way, well, we kind of are. If you look at leadership as the opportunity to impact somebody else, to influence the world around you, to inspire someone else, way I see it, not all of us get leadership titles. But we do get leadership moments. And in those moments, when we find ourselves in positions of accidental leadership, sure, we'll come up with ideas on our own, but I also think we should look around every now and then and listen to those people that we pass in the hallway who have an idea that just bubbles up because they see a need. And those of you with an idea, don't be scared to share it, thinking it's too silly. If we's could do it, so can you. I'm just saying. What I love about we's was that it was more than just an idea she came up with. It was a vision. And there's a difference. It is one thing to have an idea to have a prom. It's another to give these kids a moment to shine in the dark, to make a memory, to help them see something good. Maybe it's the difference in what we do and why we do it. Sometimes I think we get so focused on the what that we forget the why. I hope each of you has a story, not just of what you do, but why you do it. How it makes you feel good at the end of the day to be part of something bigger. Doesn't hurt to share those stories. It makes you stronger as a team. And you start seeing the people on the other side of the system as something more than the people in accounting. You start to see them as, well, people. And your team is stronger when you know who you're working beside. Because when you hear even just a minute of somebody's story, did you know it creates a human connection? You develop a sort of a trust. That's really important in the work that we all do in this world. Emotional connection. So anyway, whether you see it or not, you are part of a bigger collective story of the good work you all put into the world. The story that's bigger than what it says on your door or your job description or your name badge. That story's important because that is what holds you all together. Without that, you're all just instruments in a symphony playing your own song. The vision puts you all on the same page, playing the same piece. And like what we saw with Wheeze, the story was what sold it. Remember, when she shared her idea, everybody shot it down. But when she shared her story from her heart, they listened. Facts tell, but stories sell. Now, proms are hard enough to pull off when times are normal. Maybe some of you know that. Decorations, music, food, directing traffic, it's a lot to orchestrate. But you add a pandemic in the mix, and people were quickly reminded why they canceled it in the first place. Sticking to a vision is tough when the obstacles and the I told you so's hit. That's when purpose comes into play. They couldn't have the prom in May like they normally did. Numbers were still too high. Well, then let's have it a few months later, somebody says. In the summer? We can't have a prom in the summer. Who does that? Doesn't make sense. Who ever heard of a summer prom? Using the school wasn't going to be an option. Too many regulations. Can't have that many people gathered inside. Can you imagine how that would work? Then let's find another way. We'll do it outside. Outside? Are you crazy? In a parking lot? Who ever heard? Well, I think that's just about as tacky as you can get. My daughter is not going to be crowned prom queen on an asphalt dance floor. What do you mean, no king and queen this year? Fred, come here and catch me, because I am surely about to faint in disbelief. And where will the photographer be stationed? How will we staff it, being summer? And what are we going to do for decoration? Glow sticks? From the dollar store? You have got to be kidding me. Forget the photographer. There's no way we want this to be captured on film forever. And while the audience of naysayers joined in the chorus of "It can't be done's," the rest of the town ignored them and got to work finding a way. Harvey's wife thought he was crazy when he said he was going to be driving one of the buses to pick up kids for the prom. "But you're the principal," she exclaimed. But he didn't even hear her. He was off looking to find that tux in the attic and hoped that it would still fit. When word got out that some of the girls might not be able to afford dresses, with so many of their parents out of work, the ladies over at the community center started collecting donated dresses, borrowed some sewing machines, and got to work. Hard times were no excuse for not having a fancy dress. The men searched their closets for suits and tuxes they could loan out to the boys. And after that, well, it just sort of took off on its own, like chickenpox through daycare. Word spread through town about this summer prom that seemed silly until they explained about Wheeze never getting her prom. And did you know how sick she was in high school? And this was really about bringing some light into the dark for these kids when they needed it most, especially those who might not have had the kind of life to be envied, if you know what I mean. And if that didn't get into everybody right here in the heart, I don't know what would. You see, what was happening was that people were getting caught up in the story. Every time someone heard about it, they'd want to help. For when people see good, they often want to be part of it. Again, not because you told them, but because they wanted to. So when you see good in your own organizations, share that story. In your own teams, in your own communities, share it, and it'll inspire others to create more like it, I promise. And if you have an idea that you want to share, that you need to influence someone else with, if you have an idea, don't just share your idea. Share the story of what that idea will mean to the ones it serves. Now, something even cooler was happening in our town. Every time the story was shared, it tapped into someone else's memory of a time when they missed out in their own childhood, and how much they needed a night to forget about their own worries And the story became bigger than Wee's and the kids, but it became about that person too. See how it works? You see, there's actually something really scientific that happens in the brain when someone hears a story told a certain way. But you can read all about it in your free gift, kellysfreegift.com. I'll repeat it again near the end. And in that gift, you're going to have a lot of content, my book, a training video, all these resources that will help you. So the idea and the vision starts with the one who creates it. But it really takes flight when people take ownership of it personally. When your story becomes their story. That's when vision becomes purpose. The second word in your theme this year. I think we're seeing here in our town how it is the story that carries the power to create true change. It's the story that is contagious and finds a way to become what it needs to be for every listener, as a story often starts as the teller's, but almost always becomes the listener's. And this is really important, because this is when each of you become storytellers of the brand. It's like McDonald's. Tons of McDonald's all over the country. McDonald's has a definite brand and a definition. No matter where you go, they sell the same thing that tastes the same way, well, hopefully, for the same price. It's their brand. It's their collective story, the vision. But the success of McDonald's, whether you will give it 5 stars or 1, depends on your own experience, right? And your experience depends on every single person you come into contact with. It doesn't matter what their job is. If the guy mopping the floor drags his wet mop across your new purse, there's going to be some words. The way the world sees your organization is made up of how the world experiences your organization. You are going to be impacted by whoever you see. It's going to frame the way you see the whole place. Make sense? I know. It's a lot to think about. Anyway, so here's another way you can look at it. I took piano lessons most of my life growing up. And I had this one teacher who would get so frustrated because I wasn't playing this concerto like he wanted. I was playing the right notes and tempo with the right fingers and place, but he said I wasn't playing it with feeling. Haven't you ever been in love? He bellowed. I'm like, no, dude, I'm only 12. Well, until then, he said, you won't understand this piece. And he stormed off. I had no idea what he meant at the time, but I do now. You see, as musicians, we can all be given the same piece of music on paper, the vision, yet each of us is going to play it in our own way. We add a feeling and a style to it that makes it personal. How you choose to play that song, well, that's the difference in vision and purpose. Vision is what you do, the collective story. Purpose is why you do it. Why the vision matters so much to you personally. Your story. So that's how Weeze's idea became so much bigger than when it started. Because people began to make the story their own. For the first time in our town, the prom was not being planned by committee. The whole town was pitching in. I still remember my prom back in 1984, somebody would say, while hammering the decorations. Remember when Billy Ellersby spiked a punch and our choir teacher, Mrs. Eulalie Banks, drank it unknowingly and passed out in the corner? I remember my prom, she says with a smile as she pauses her sewing on the hem of the pink prom dress with lace. I was so nervous, and about a foot taller than my date, even in flats. I got my first kiss. Now, 50 years later, and we still dance in the kitchen to the same song we did all those years ago. Shoot, I bet some of you right now are even thinking of your own prom, aren't you? I still remember my prom dress. Yes, I got asked, even though I was an incredibly geeky kid. Luckily, my date was even geekier. Y'all, my mother was beyond excited. She had the perfect dress all picked out for me. It was waiting in the back of her closet. It was from the 60s. Y'all, it was this long olive-colored green skirt with a rickrack. Y'all remember rickrack? With a rickrack hem. And right near the bottom, it had a big applique snail on it with a big button for an eye. It was the ugliest thing you've ever seen. And according to my mama, if it was good enough for the 60s, by golly, it was good enough for her daughter. With the Coke bottle lenses and my flyaway frizzy hair from that one time Mom tried to perm it, and it never fully recovered. And to make things worse, my mother decides to put me in this dress a few weeks before prom and take me out to the public park for a few pictures. So y'all, I'm standing there mortified, standing up against a tree in this godforsaken skirt while my mother is hosting a photo shoot. And as if that wasn't bad enough, turns out ducks like rickrack. Or snails. I don't know. Hard to say. We were running too fast to ask them. Anyway, back to the prom. That was a special time in our town that we didn't see often. Or it had been a while. People coming together that otherwise probably wouldn't. Being part of something bigger, each one caught up in the story. The neatest thing was seeing the young and the old working together and actually enjoying each other's company. The older people enjoying the delicious fragrance of youth and a chance to visit where visitors had been so few. The young enjoying the attention and not realizing what nuggets of wisdom were being buried that they would one day unpack with great fondness from these unexpected mentors who understood exactly what it was like to not have a mother around. And here, dear, try on this dress to see if it fits. Mentor. The third and the last word in your theme. I think it's such a fitting word to go with vision and purpose because it's all about the people we serve. Now, I was blessed in my life to have people come along at the right time, people who breathed hope into my soul, people who saw something in me I didn't see in myself. Do you ever have somebody see something in you you didn't see for yourself? People who spoke a truth to me from further down the road I was walking. The mentors who pave our lives and make us strong. I think we needed to be reminded of that in our town. The importance of mentorship. I think we had kind of forgotten it. That we're the ones who create the legacy for those who come behind us. I mean, I believe we were created for fellowship with each other, that we weren't meant to go through life alone. And I think it's just part of the grand design that the older will come alongside the younger. And there are so many young people out there just desperate for someone to come show them how to go after their dreams. Now, a lot of us think we can't be mentors. I've thought that. I'm not smart enough. Nobody cares about my opinion, that we won't know how to be a good mentor, when really, I think sometimes they just need us to show up. Someone to show them that we believe in them, especially those that never had anybody tell them that. The way I see it, it's not too hard just to be there. And the best way to connect as a mentor is to share your story. Because telling them what they need to do or what they should do is never as powerful as showing them that you understand what they're going through because you have been there. Story has a powerful way of illustrating your truth. It lets them actually experience what you have to share. Story shows them that you can relate. Now, no, we're not going to relate to what you've been through, but we do relate to how it made you feel. That is so important. We connect through the emotions in our story, not the plot. I may not know what it was like for you to move here from another country as a child. But if you tell me you felt alone and scared and worried about how you were going to make friends, well, those feelings I recognize. I mean, they say we only have a handful of emotions. It's the shared human experience that connects us. And it's the story that holds it. The story allows us to pass that baton on in a way where they will truly carry the wisdom with them. It allows them to see us as more than just somebody old, but somebody. If you need a mentor, find one. And if not, be one. Shoot, do both. The only way we are going to get stronger is together. I know we hear that all the time, but it doesn't change the truth. Stories are the bridge that shows us we're more alike than we are different. It sure is hard to hate someone when you've had a chance to step into their shoes for a minute. I'm just saying. On the afternoon of the prom, a handful of volunteers stood there in the parking lot, surveying their work with nervous anxiety. "Well," someone whispered, "we did the best we could with what we had." And they all went home to clean up and pray for the best. It was still light out when kids started arriving in their borrowed cars and the yellow buses that had been decorated with silver streamers but still smelled a little like old gym socks. The buses were the transportation officials' idea, since some of the kids didn't have a way to get there. Just made sense. They recruited the accounting department along with the principal to be the drivers. If you were just passing through town, you might have turned your nose up at the idea of a prom held in a parking lot between the Sunnyside Hills Assisted Living Center, you know, that ugly old gray high-rise building with all the windows, the China Dragon on the other side with the faded orange blinking sign that always said 2 for 1 special, even if there wasn't, and Turley's Tire Repair with the closed until further notice sign hanging on the front door. Another victim of the virus that made us all sad whenever we drove by. You might have thought it tacky that right up front was a big black barbecue grill with the district attorney standing right there watching over his cooker and his special homemade barbecue while the superintendent was serving up his award-winning sauce. 2 people in payroll were working the punch bowl to make sure it didn't get spiked. And the sheriff was running the DJ booth and kept insisting on playing his favorite tunes from the 80s. You might have laughed at the asphalt dance floor that had been painted over in glitter, temporary paint, of course, by a dedicated group of maintenance and operations staff who had argued for an hour in the Hobby Lobby on what color glitter best fit the mood. Or the pickup trucks lining the perimeter with their high beams on because the parking lot lights weren't bright enough. Each one measured and strategically placed into position by school facility planners and engineers. The truck beds, of course, were filled with sofas and coolers, because some people here in our town will take any excuse to tailgate. The parking lot was filled with volunteers who had stepped up to help, not one of them ever uttering that this wasn't their job. They were just neighbor helping neighbor. That's something you don't always see anymore. Shoot, you don't always see neighbor even knowing neighbor. World's filled with people like that, though. You know, the ones who step up in ways you never see. The countless people who work behind the curtain instead of out front, and who rarely get the credit for what they do, for their part in the story. Kind of like you. You're the ones most of us never see. You're behind the curtain, right? You're making things work, making things run, making a difference. And you're probably not appreciated as much as you should be. I always buy the teacher a gift. I don't think of all the others behind that curtain who worked just as hard, if not harder. You know, the people that we refer to as the system. That's the thing people seem quickly to forget. Those of us who are on the outside of the school system. Those of us who are caught up in comments like, the system is broken. The system has failed us. We sometimes forget. You aren't a system. You're people. Our neighbors, our friends, our family members. Doing the best you can with what you've got. And probably never truly appreciated enough as you should be. So at least let me be one to thank you for that. Sorry I never got you a gift at the end of the school year. So yes, from the outside in, this prom might have seemed tacky and hardly worth the effort. Yes, there were masks. Kids looked a little weird dancing at a social distance, but shoot, most of them are pretty weird at that age anyway. So in passing, you might have thought that a time to shine was far from the right theme, and the prom a silly idea. But you would have been wrong. I remember the moment when it got dark. It was one of those quick turns from day to night. And this hush swept over the parking lot all at once. For in one blink of an eye, out of nowhere, suddenly we were swept up into this breathtaking blanket of twinkling lights. They were everywhere, strung through trees, from light pole to light pole. There must have been thousands. How long it must have taken. It was like the sky full of stars had dropped down around all of us and wrapped us up in a heaven-scented hug. And the assisted living home, which just moments before was that same dingy old gray high-rise building, was now lit up like 1,000,000 stars. It had taken the sun to go down and the world to go dark to see what they had done. Residents who had been waiting, poised, in position at every single available window pane, sitting there in their front row seats, waving their dollar store glow sticks. And I'm not sure who it was that began to sing. Just somebody in the crowd, overcome with emotion, I guess. It was authentic. It was real. It was raw. You could just hear those notes. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, the notes were coming from some place far down in a weary soul, enchanted out of its misery. If you were there, you'd understand. Maybe in a way you are. For in this moment, it wasn't about a school dance, and it wasn't just about the kids. It was about the whole town needing this. To be reminded that all those ordinary flickers of light, when strung together, become something quite extraordinary. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And that one thin reed of hope sang into the breeze a million rays of comfort. And while it was unexpected, it was somehow, strangely, perfect. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. We watched as one of the senior boys, captain of the football team, walked across the parking lot right up to Miss Wees, who was still standing there holding a ladle for the punch bowl. And he placed that plastic rhinestone crown on top of her head. And not one person contested. And he held out his hand and he asked her to dance. And just like that, Wees got her moment to be the queen of the prom. And if you could have seen the look on her face, well, I swear she looked 16 all over again. And everybody watching knew that that moment alone had made it all worth it. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And from that moment on, nobody noticed the dresses with crooked hems that smelled a little like mothballs, or the boys whose suit sleeves dangled a touch too far. They were all too busy enjoying what they had been part of. You see, this was for all of them their moment to shine. And if you had been there and had chosen to see something different, well then, you're the one we'd feel sorry for, not them. That night there was a symphony. I truly do think that the big conductor in the sky up there delights in scripting another masterpiece, not with the most expensive, shiny instruments or the most renowned and polished musicians, but with the most ordinary of notes. The unseemingly simple arrangement that, when played, can turn a million ordinary glow sticks into a concerto. Why? Maybe to prove to us that no matter how weary, how ordinary our life may seem, there is always the possibility of an unexpected symphony if you just trust the notes and continue to play. When I talk about the power of story to influence, there is a lot more I can say. There is a whole training video I can show you, and it's in your free gift, that will explain to you what story does to the brain, the psychology of persuasion. I can teach you the pieces, and it'll be in the book in your free gift, that give the story the structure it needs. There's another resource in there, an ebook on things like how do you change a corporate narrative? How do you change a negative story into a positive? How do you create a story-driven culture? But I didn't want to go into all of that today. You can go later, pull out your resources, and it will take you into the how story works. And I'm going to tell you your free gift one more time in case you've forgotten. There's going to be 2 ways for you to go access it, so don't panic. The 3 ways if you want to just find me on Google and send me an email and say you can't find it. The second is go to kellysfreegift.com. Kellys, no apostrophe, kellysfreegift.com. The other way is go find my website, Google me, I'm easy to find. There's a tab at the top that says free gift. Come in there, we can stay in touch, and you can walk away with all the resources that you'll probably ever need It's an important tool and not something you can just slap on and use on Monday. It's something you really have to learn and incorporate and spend some time studying it, something that you bring into every part of your life, not just your work. Because like I said, we're all in the business of persuasion. We can all influence and impact someone else, even though you may not realize it, and even though it might be in the most unexpected place. Tomorrow you can learn how story works. Today, I just wanted to focus on the why, so that you can see when it comes to influencing others, it's not the idea that does the work, it's the story. It's you taking that vision and making it personal to you, and then finding a way to make it personal to them. Do this, and everybody will want to be part of the something bigger. So tomorrow you can learn how to craft your new tool. Today, I just wanted you to experience its magic. Our town is almost on the other side of this pandemic now. We're coming out of it. We're getting to smaller shades of normal. Some are already planting new seeds, and some with scars that will never quite heal. And if you ask them to look back on it all and find your silver linings, I urge you to do that. Look back on it all. Find the good. See what it was meant to teach you. Look for those silver linings. Because I think if you had asked our town to go back and find that silver lining, I'm sure almost everybody would remember the night of the parking lot prom. The night of 1,000 stars and the music of ordinary people proving that there is still good in the world. Proving to me anyway that sometimes you might need some darkness in order to help you find some light. Remind me that we need each other, and that sometimes you can find a way to fly, even in an asphalt parking lot, without your feet ever having to leave the ground. I'm Kelly Swanson. It's been an honor to join you here. May all your days lead to unexpected symphonies. It's been nice to meet you. Thank you, and goodbye.